Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features Marvel Comics Presents number 72, which featured the first chapter of 13 of Weapon X, the Weapon X serial by Barry Windsor-Smith. This came out in March 1991 and continued up to September 91. Issue 84 was the last chapter. So 13 chapters of this serial, and it came out fortnightly or every 2 weeks. So quite a striking image here. Beneath the caption, "Before Wolverine there was Weapon X," and we have Wolverine in the foreground in a cruciform stance, a little bit like Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. One half he's in his X-Men brown and orange costume with extended claws. In the other he's naked and has these pins extruding from his flesh. And in behind him, of course, there is that staring skull in gunmetal grey, and it has what looks like a kind of a crown of thorns. These nails coming from the skull and the binding of tubes over the eyes, and then this kind of spine of nails and tubes which the skull is resting on. Very striking, horrifying, intriguing, and the flames, of course, coming from beneath the image as well. Really great use of color here. You've got the yellow and red of the titles reflected in the flames on the bottom of the page, and of course your eye goes straight to Wolverine in the center, and then the skull, a memento mori, a reminder of death, in the background. Really wonderful cover by Barry Windsor-Smith. How could you see this on the stands, on the racks, and pass it by? Let's open this one up to the title page here, the credits page rather, for Marvel Comics Presents. So this is the one we're interested in, Weapon X, page 1, Prologue. It's a 13-part story, and the legend here is long before the X-Men, before even Wolverine, there is simply Logan, the mutant, by Barry Windsor-Smith, letterer Jim Novak, and Barry Windsor-Smith. So Windsor-Smith is co-lettering this, and his lettering is all the lettering you see on the page in the art, such as here, the title of the file, the perspective from the spectacles, the sound effect for the lightning strike. All of that is Windsor-Smith, and then the lettering in the captions is Novak, but the placement of the lettering is down to Windsor-Smith. So this truly is an auteur piece of comics from Barry Windsor-Smith. The story goes that he started work independently on this story. He did about 2 chapters, or what would be 2 chapters, in Marvel Comics Presents. And then he went to Terry Kavanagh, who was the editor of Marvel Comics Presents, there he is there, and asked him would he be interested in running his story in this particular comic. Kavanagh said yes. Then apparently Marvel's sales department got wind of the project, and they decided, or thought, it would be better to release it as a complete graphic novel. The story itself clocks in at 125 pages, excluding the covers. And they thought it would be best as a graphic novel, but Terry Kavanagh argued strongly to DeFalco to allow him to run it in chapter fashion in Marvel Comics Presents. And of course, this would have provided the title with a massive sales boost. So let's move to a reading and a review of the work here. So interesting panel layouts in the first chapter, which is presented as a prologue, and we've got this kind of L-shaped design of panel that runs throughout these pages. It's intriguing. Like, what came to my mind is it's like L for Logan, perhaps. Maybe that's overreading it, but certainly this is a very interesting device of Barry Windsor-Smith's in the first 2 panels, the first 2 horizontal panels, where you've got the title of the file on this particular project, Experiment X, when this character, who's later revealed to be known as the Professor, and who looks a lot like Professor X, a version of Professor X, but isn't Professor X, lifts his spectacles to his eyes to read the folder and file. The lenses happen to pick out the letters X and men. So a really nice touch by Barry Windsor-Smith here. And of course the coloring is all by Windsor-Smith as well. So you've got this classic Windsor-Smith palette that we saw in Uncanny X-Men 198, Life, Death Part 2, and also Uncanny X-Men 205, Wounded Wolf. And interesting just to read the setup here on this page before anybody knows what this story is going to be. You've got the telegraphing of X-Men, you've got this Professor X looking character, you've got Wolverine clearly here with a very somber face. The hooded eyes are a nice touch by Windsor-Smith, and he says storm's coming, and then there's a lightning strike. And so you're thinking, okay, is this going to be an episode of the X-Men? Is Storm going to show up? But no. And we've got these three figures here. These are interesting. They've been observing Wolverine. We'll learn that later. Yeah, it's a big one, is the narrative caption. And we will learn as we proceed through this particular prologue that the voice speaking is Wolverine. So it's first person narration through this chapter. Yeah, it's a big one, the big one, the one I've been looking out for as he drives away his convertible sports car. And when is this set? What is the timeline here? What we're getting here is a mixing of timelines and basically anachronic storytelling. So the storytelling is out of order chronologically, but we're seeing parallels between what different characters are up to, and presumably as Wolverine is going about, as it turns out, his life in forced retirement. So we've got this suspicious figure watching Wolverine as he puts away all these bottles of, is it whiskey he's drinking? Has he drank 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bottles of whiskey, perhaps? And he continues there, time to write home, make peace with somebody. Dear Ma, you goat-headed, misshapen, wall-eyed witch, got some news for you. The secret is out. Signed, your son with the hairy paws. Huh, as if I knew who Ma was. Everybody's got one, or two maybe. Secrets, I mean. And this is juxtaposed with a top-down shot of the professor at his desk, taking out clippings from newspapers about one Cornelius. And here is his full name, Cornelius Abraham B. So Abraham B. Cornelius, ABC. Interesting. And Wolverine continues here in the bar. I got a doozy. It's a serious mother load. Hard hiding it sometimes, but I get by. What is his secret? And we've got Dr. Cornelius, as it turns out, looking at newspaper clippings about himself. Dr. Cornelius sorts in connection with death here. Mercy killer, quack, eludes FBI. So he's on the FBI's wanted list. Malpractice, suits on the rise. So obviously has been charged with or is suspected of medical malpractice. It implies that he is not exactly an adherent to his Hippocratic oath. And great use of props here. We've got the dial phone, we've got the cup of coffee, we've got the eaten or the plate of empty food. He's in obviously in some kind of apartment or maybe cafe, and the implication is when he picks up the phone that he's calling the professor, meets him on this rain-swept corner at night. But again, look at the hooded eyes, look at the kind of somber, sad face on Professor Cornelius, who's probably at the end of his career in terms of ever being able to practice medicine legally again. And also to note here, the rendering of the rain-swept street at night with the street light here and the water washing down the street. So we've got the inking here by Windsor-Smith. We've got probably white media cut in to the ink lines to render the rain, and we've got even the delineation of the raindrops and puddles here on the sidewalk or footpath. We've got information here on this other character that's been introduced. Looks like Carol Hines, and we have her previous employer NASA, worked for them 12.5 months. Has she been exposed to radiation? No. Will she submit to a lie detector test? Yes. Will she take an oath of security? Yes. And so on and so forth. And Wolverine's first person narration continues, where he says, others got their secrets writ over their faces. They're the ones who get found out. And is the implication about Cornelius having his secret being found out in terms of medical mispractice, mercy killing, euthanasia, and end up dangling from somebody else's line, the professor's. But you only get hooked if you take the bait right. So the number he got to call the professor. And then here's the professor reviewing Hines's CV probably. And she looks fairly naive and not at all cognizant maybe of what she's getting into, and we'll see that turn out to be the case later in the story. And then we've got Wolverine here, or maybe it's better to call him Logan, at a firing range. Range is routine. I could put 6 shots into a quarter and get change for the gun machine when my hands ain't shaking. So I wing some geek with a ricochet. Like, who gives a toss? Suits do, I guess. And then we get this file here on Logan, number 1727, an Ontario address. After 4-month survey, individual Logan strongly suggest erratic behavior and possible self-destructiveness, likely resulting from chronic alcohol abuse, morbid preoccupation with current quote-unquote mutant scare. Press and trivia related sources suggests possible nervous disorder or psychosis. This last is inconclusive, however. A leave of absence is recommended. Alternative measure would be dismissal from service with standard pay distributed over the 3-year period. Due to violent nature of retiree, extreme caution is suggested in any subsequent interaction. And here's the incident: critical wounding of the firing range staff member. Immediate dismissal is imperative and pending investigation as a priority. All units plus operatives acknowledged by something reports to this office, and it's about Logan. So Logan doesn't think much of the ricochet, but it seems to be related to the alcohol abuse. And what's that down to? That's an open question. And then we have this vertical panel here of computer monitors with some of these files on the monitors. So obviously the professor has gotten access to these files on Logan. And then we've got this different pair of spectacles. It's Cornelius's. So he's on board with the project now. And we've got the Experiment X file lying on the table here. So then this is a great page as well, with Logan in this ratty hotel room or apartment, spending my nights at the Prophecy. It's for fallen Christians, you know. I ain't got that stuff, but I lied to get through the door. Hey, it's free for the fallen, so I guess I qualify. So here it is here, Prophecy. Then there's some animal experimentation going on, inset into the page. And then we've got more drinking, whiskey from Logan. We've got blood on his fingers. What's that from? The broken glass. But notice how quickly his fingers heal, right? An indication that he's got his healing factor, yes? Even as he sucks the blood from off his fingers. So let's see what he says here. Prophecy is part of the apocalypse. Did you know that? I didn't. Some drunk bum down the hall told me that. Spat as he said it too. Then he croaked. Happens a lot round here. Been thinking about moving on. And the newspaper here, the newspaper report, the headline is Outcry Over Mutants. Public enraged. And we've got here this other one, Cornelius, Saint or Murderer is the headline. And we've got the broken whiskey glass, the stubbed out cigar, the Canadian whiskey, and the revolver. And here we have this experimentation going on now with an ape. And we've got this great scene here. Yeah, catching the 8 o'clock up to the Yukon. But first, there are bills to settle and some loose ends to tie. That's cool. This is interesting how to read this, because we've got a father and mother and a young child. And what's happening here? The child is pointing at Logan. Is Logan just having a random brawl, or is he protecting the family from potentially a mugger? When I saw this first, I was put in mind of Batman Year One, and it's almost as if there's a kind of like an intertextual reference to Batman Year One. What if someone like Wolverine had intervened and knocked out the mugger that wiped out young Bruce Wayne's family? And here we've got an inset of the Professor with the light glinting on his spectacles, and then Wolverine waking up with a massive hangover. Yeah, up in the Klondike where nobody knows me, I'll get away from what's coming. Yo, do that, get away, as he flops out on the mattress. And then we have another scene with the ape and something coming away from its body. And it looks like, yeah, they put a rat with its bones and its rib cage here into the tank with the ape. And Wolverine says in his first person narration, oh, ever felt like a rat in a trap? Or what do you call those things? Pinwheels or something? Like you're running for your life, but you're getting nowhere. And all of this is foreshadowing for what is going to happen to him in the course of this story. Another great couple of pages here, and you notice that the words are pulling back from the story in these pages. We're getting more of the story told through the juxtaposition of the panels and scenes. Just nowhere, except the edge of the dark, and this is prescient. So we see here this little change from his hairs on his head turning into wires in this little panel here, this little square panel, and then the bones of the rat, and then just this horrifying image of the transformed ape in the tank. So obviously the Professor and Cornelius are working away on animal experimentation before they take their project further to a human trial stage. And Wolverine's narration continues, and the dreams of death in the shadowed rooms of the prophecy, as we see his claws popping from his hand, and there's little thorns or spikes on them. And then he wakes, so it's a nightmare. He wakes up. It's the same every night. Pain and bones and spikes, dagger hands, bloodshot with vile stench and horror. And we see this ape with these nails in its skull, screaming, but it turns out its jaw has come away and it is fished out from the tank. And here obviously Cornelius is working on the remains, anatomized remains of the ape, supervised by the Professor. And again, look, we've got the L-shaped panel, This is a motif of Windsor-Smith's layouts. for this opening prologue of the series. And so here we have a little window into the control center with all the computers and wires and tubing for the coming experimentation. And then we've got Wolverine slumped down here with his back to the radiator in the prophecy. This is a great image, great coloring here as well. And, you know, like you get a sense of his despair in this image. Here, his face as well. And then we have this, is it a preview of his own point of view of this handler with an electrified prod? Is this what he will see in the future? The point of view here looking up at the handler and the professor in a caged area. And he thinks storm's coming. So great juxtaposition of images here conveying horror and the coming storm for Wolverine. And the sound effects, the rumbling in the background, the buzzing of the electrified prod, the thum, the rumble, the crack of the lightning strike. And that also juxtaposed with the neon of the sign for the prophecy. And here we go, last page. So Wolverine looking out the window with the rain pouring down the window pane. Just like the old geezer said, the apocalypse, when all the secrets are exposed and all the running ends, hell is coming. And the lightning strikes the neon sign as he thumps his fist on the window panes, and the glass cracks with the force of his thumping the panes. And then we see the sparks of electrics from the neon sign flying across the bottom horizontal panel, and Wolverine looking out here with intense concentration, expecting the storm coming. And here we've got the remains of the experiment on the ape, and all of these pins and yeah, they're pins that were stuck in the body, and what is going on in the blood on the table. Just look at this as well from Windsor-Smith. You've got the flash of lightning outside the window, and you've got the light from the lightning even showing up on Wolverine's hair here, on the crown of his head. Tremendous combination of story, words, imagery, color, pencil, ink, the lettering. This is a complete piece of work. This is excellent stuff. Something else to note here about the references to Apocalypse. Windsor-Smith has revealed that he spoke to Chris Claremont at the time about what he was doing with this story, which is, it's not so much Wolverine, well, in a sense it's Wolverine's origin, it's not Logan's origin, but it is specifically focused on how did Wolverine get his adamantium-laced skeleton. And he spoke to Chris Claremont about what he was doing here, and Claremont told him that he had a plan that a major Marvel supervillain was going to be revealed by Claremont ultimately to be the originator of Wolverine's adamantium-laced skeleton. And probably he might, like rather Windsor-Smith says, that he specified that it was Apocalypse that he had in mind for this. And so Windsor-Smith is, in a sense, like with a sense of collegiality, working in these coded references to Apocalypse in the story, as well as the fact that the professor is answering to someone higher up even than himself. And so that was giving Claremont an opportunity to reveal that the ultimate string puller was Apocalypse behind this. But that's not how things turned out after Claremont left Marvel in 1991. But interesting to know that Windsor-Smith Like, he's on a solo run here, but he's respectful of Claremont enough to talk to him about what he's doing, and then goes ahead with his story. So I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on the prologue to the 13-part Weapon X serial. And if you did, please like the video in YouTube, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.